hate is loud, but my purpose is louder. People will hate you for being confident, for setting boundaries, for refusing to shrink just to make them comfortable. Let them. Hate is not a reflection of your worth. It's often a reaction to your strength. That truth, once fully understood, can completely change how you see yourself and how you respond to negativity. Too often we internalize hate. We absorb it, thinking it's evidence that something is wrong with us. That if people dislike us, we must be doing something wrong. But the reality is hate is frequently a mirror, one that reflects the discomfort, insecurities, and unresolved issues of others. It's not about you. It's about how they perceive your strength, your presence, your voice, and how that challenges the world they built around themselves. When people see someone living boldly, confidently, and unapologetically, it disturbs them, especially if they haven't yet given themselves permission to do the same. Your strength, your confidence, and your authenticity can feel like a spotlight to someone who is hiding in their own shadows. They hate what they don't understand. They hate what they wish they had the courage to be. And that hate comes out as criticism, judgment, exclusion, or plain hostility. Strength doesn't always look like power or perfection. Sometimes it looks like being real when everyone else is pretending. It looks like choosing peace over drama, healing instead of hurting, and boundaries over people pleasing. And when you start showing that strength, it unsettles people who benefit from your silence or your compliance. But that's why people hate. Not because you're wrong, but because you've outgrown what they expected you to be, and that scares them. People will rarely hate you for being weak. They'll pity you, maybe ignore you, but they won't hate you. Hate comes when you rise. When you no longer shrink to fit into the spaces you've outgrown. When you walk in rooms like you belong there. When you start saying no without guilt and yes, without fear. Suddenly you're labeled difficult, cocky, arrogant. But the truth is, you're just no longer controlled. That strength can come from many places. It might be your resilience after everything you've survived. It might be the way you keep going when people expect you to quit. It might be the way you love yourself in a world that profits from your self-doubt. Or it might be how you speak your truth, even when your voice shakes. That's the strength people often hate, not because there's something wrong with it, but because it reveals the parts themselves they haven't faced. People pleasing is rooted in fear. Fear of rejection, judgment, abandonment. It comes from a place of believing that your worth is conditional, that you must earn love, respect, or belonging by being useful, agreeable, or pleasant. But that belief is a trap. Because if someone only values you when you're pleasing them, they don't value you. They value what you do for them. That's not love. That's convenience. Trying to please everyone also leads to confusion. You don't know who you are because you've never given the space to find out. You've been living a filtered life, presenting only the parts that seem acceptable. And when you try to step into your real self, it feels awkward, risky, even wrong. But the truth is that discomfort isn't a sign that you're doing something bad. It's a sign that you're doing something new, something real. The longer you stay in the habit of pleasing, the harder it becomes to tell what's authentic and what's performative. You might even start to resent the people you've been trying to please, not because of who they are, but because of what you've sacrificed for their comfort. You'll resent yourself too, because deep down, you know you abandoned your own voice to keep the peace. And peace bought through self-betrayal isn't peace at all. It's quiet chows. Eventually, you reach a point where something in you breaks. Maybe it's burnout. Maybe it's a moment of clarity. Maybe it's just a deep, etching exhaustion from carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. And in that moment, you realize trying to please everyone is a losing game. Because you weren't born to be liked by everyone. You were born to live as yourself. Fully, freely, unapologetically. And any life built on pretending is a life half lived. So you begin to unlearn. You start saying no. You start taking up space. You start showing up in your truth, even if it means disappointing someone else. And as hard as it is, you feel lighter, because every time you choose honesty over performance, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You remember that your worth doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being real. People will hate you regardless of how you act, so stay true to yourself. That's a hard truth, but it's one of the most freeing things you can ever understand. No matter how kind you are, how generous, how humble, how accommodating, there will still be someone who doesn't like you. Someone will still find a reason to criticize, dismiss, or judge you. And it won't always make sense. But you have the power. You could give your best and someone will say it's not enough. You could stay quiet to keep the peace and they'll say you're cold or distant. You could speak up and be called aggressive. You could stay low key and be labeled a nobody. You could shine and be called arrogant. You could be soft and be called weak. So where does it end? The answer, it doesn't. And that's why you have to stop living for the approval of people who will find a reason to hate you no matter what you do. The truth is, people don't see you as you, they see you as a reflection of their own inner world. If they are bitter, they'll see your confidence as arrogance. If they are insecure, they'll see your boundaries as rejection. If they are jealous, they'll see your success as a threat. If they feel small, they'll try to make you smaller. So their opinion of you is rarely ever about you. It's about what you trigger in them. You could bend over backwards, walk on eggshells, and shape shift into whatever version you think they want, and they'd still find a flaw. You still be too much for some and not enough for others. That's the trap of people pleasing. You chase a moving target, and the more you run after it, the more lost you become. Trying to avoid being hated is a full-time job with no benefits. It robs you of your peace, your joy, and your identity. Because every time you alter yourself for approval, you move one step further from who you really are. And ironically, even then, the hate doesn't stop. It just changes shape. People will hate you for being fake. People will hate you for trying too hard. People will hate you for staying quiet. People will hate you for standing tall. It doesn't matter which mask you wear, they'll find something wrong with it anyway. So why not just be real? Why not live with the freedom that comes from knowing you have nothing to prove and no one to impress? When you stay true to yourself, but you have the power, at least you know the hate you receive isn't because you betrayed who you are. It's because someone couldn't handle who you are. And that's a big difference. Being hated for your truth is far better than being loved for your lies, because love built on performance is never safe. It's conditional. It comes with strings. It requires you to keep performing just to keep receiving it. And that's not love. That's control. Staying true to yourself isn't always easy. It might cost you popularity. It might create distance between you and certain people. But the peace that comes from authenticity is worth it. You stop second guessing every move. You stop editing your personality for approval. You stop feeling like you're walking through life on a tightrope. You learn to trust yourself again, to listen to your own voice over the noise of everyone else. And even when the hate comes, it doesn't hit the same. Because deep down, you know you're not pretending, playing a role. You're not trying to be someone else. You're showing up as you, and that's powerful. Some people will misunderstand you. Some will judge your tone, your energy, your silence, your expression. Let them. They are not your people. The ones who truly see you, the ones meant for you. They won't need you to shrink or filter or explain yourself endlessly. They'll love you where you are as you are. And even when they disagree with you, it won't turn into hatred. It'll turn into growth, to dialogue, into connection. You can't control how others feel about you. You can only control how you feel about yourself. And when you root yourself in truth, when you live in alignment with your values, your voice, your dreams, you become unshakable. Not because the hate disappears, but because it no longer defines you. It becomes background noise. You begin to see it for what it is, a reflection of them, not a verdict on you. Silence and self-belief are more powerful than reacting to hate. It doesn't always feel that way, especially in a world where people expect you to clap back. Defend yourself, prove your worth, or set the record straight every time someone disrespects you. But the truth is, not every attack deserves a reaction. Not every critic is worth your energy. And not every insult requires a response. When you have deep self-belief, you realize that validation from others is not your fuel, and neither is their hate your weakness. People often mistake silence for weakness. They assume that if you're not speaking up, you must not have anything to say. If you're not defending yourself, you must be guilty. But silence, when it comes from a place of strength, is a statement all on its own. It says, I know who I am. I don't need to explain it to you. It says, your words don't hold power over me. Silence can be louder than 1,000 arguments because it shows restraint, wisdom, and self-mastery. It shows that you are not ruled by impulse or emotion, but by purpose. Hate feeds off attention. It wants your reaction. It wants to pull you into a cycle of defending, explaining, proving, and performing. But when you stay silent, not out of fear, but out of peace, you starve that energy and make it clear that you are unavailable for that kind of drama. You remove yourself from the game entirely. And in doing so, you keep your power. Because once you start reacting to every opinion, every insult, every misunderstanding, you give away pieces of yourself. You start living on the terms of others, constantly responding to noise instead of focusing on your own direction. Self-belief is what anchors you when hate tries to shake you. It's the voice inside you that says, I am enough, even when the world is shouting that you're not. It's what keeps you standing tall when people try to tear you down. Without self-belief, silence feels like defeat. But with it, silence becomes discipline. It becomes clarity. When you truly believe in yourself, your purpose, your integrity, your worth, you don't need to prove anything to people who are determined to misunderstand you anyway. That's the thing about hate and hating. Most of it isn't even about you. It's about the person who's projecting it. It's about their fears, their insecurities, their own internal battles. You just happen to trigger something in them. Maybe your confidence reminded them of what they lack. Maybe your success exposed their stagnation. Maybe your joy irritated their pain. Either way, it's not your burden to carry. When you react to hate, especially in anger or defensiveness, you let their issue become your problem. But when you respond with silence and stand firm in your self-belief, you refuse to be dragged into someone else's emotional chaos. There's a quiet kind of power in choosing not to react. It's the power of knowing that not every battle is worth fighting, that your energy is sacred. That peace is more valuable than being right in the eyes of people who were never going to see you clearly anyway. You don't always have to defend your name, your choices, your path. Sometimes the best response is to keep moving forward and let your consistency, your growth, and your truth speak for you over time. Silence also gives space for reflection, for healing, for perspective. In silence, you can choose how to respond rather than react. You can decide what actually deserves your voice. You can center yourself in your values instead of getting lost in someone else's noise. And when you speak, eventually your words will come from a place of strength, not pain. From wisdom, not ego. That's what makes them impactful. The people who truly matter, who really know you, don't need constant explanations. They see you. They believe in you. They trust your silence because they trust your character. And the people who hate you, they've already made up their minds. They're not looking for the truth, looking for reasons to keep hating. So let them talk, let them assume, let them misunderstand. You don't need to chase after their approval or try to fix their perception. That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to protect your peace, to stay aligned with your purpose, to keep growing quietly if necessary. Because in the end, the loudest voice in your life should not be hate. It should be your own. And when that voice is grounded in belief, when it speaks not just in words, but in actions, in presence, in progress, no amount of hate can silence it. You don't owe anyone a smaller version of yourself to make them comfortable. That's a truth many people struggle to accept because we've been conditioned to believe that being accepted means being agreeable, quiet, unthreatening. From a young age, we're taught to be polite, to avoid confrontation, to make ourselves likable, even that means toning down who we are. We learn that being too loud, too confident, too direct, too ambitious, too much makes people uncomfortable. And in response, we start shrinking. We shrink in conversations so we don't seem arrogant. We shrink our dreams so others don't feel behind. We shrink our boundaries so people aren't offended. We shrink our voices, our goals, our very essence. Not because we want to, but because we fear what might happen if we fully show up as ourselves. But the truth is, you were not born to be small. You were not created to live a half life hidden behind layers of apology and adjustment. There are people who will feel threatened by your confidence simply because they haven't built their own. They'll call you intimidating when really what they mean is you remind them of everything they haven't allowed themselves to become. They'll try to put you in a box because it's easier to understand and control what fits in the box. But you were not made to fit. You were made to stretch limits, to challenge norms, to disrupt what's comfortable in order to create something better. Not just for yourself, but for others too. When you start playing small for the sake of others, you begin to lose sight of your purpose. You forget what it feels like to take up space without apology. And slowly, the real you gets buried beneath layers of permission seeking. But no matter how much you shrink, someone will always be uncomfortable. Someone will always misinterpret your intentions. Someone will always feel challenged by your presence. That's not your fault. And it's not your job to fix. Some people expect you to stay quiet because that's what makes them feel powerful. Some expect you to settle because that validates their own lack of growth. And some want you to keep your light dim so that it doesn't seem so dull. But that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to grow, to speak, to move, to evolve, to shine. And the people who are meant to be around you will adjust to your light. They won't ask you to dim it. They'll appreciate it even when it challenges them. There's a difference between humility and hiding. Humility is knowing your worth without needing to shout it. Hiding is pretending you don't have worth so others don't feel insecure. One is strength, the other is self-denial. And when you deny your full self long enough, you start believing that the smaller version is who you really are. You forget how expansive, how powerful, how capable you are because you've spent so long being digestible, acceptable, pleasing. But you were not put to be everyone's favorite flavor. You were put here to be you fully and completely, whether or not it fits into someone else's comfort zone. Being true to yourself will make people uncomfortable. That's a fact. Your growth might confront someone else's stagnation. Your ambition might highlight someone else's fear. Your authenticity might expose someone else's pretending. But that discomfort is theirs to work through, not yours to carry. You don't need to shrink so others can feel tall. You don't need to slow down so others can keep up. You don't need to water yourself down to be accepted. The people who truly love and respect you will never ask you to be less so they can feel like more. You have a right to your full voice, your full presence, your full identity, and you have a right to take up space without apology. That doesn't mean you have to be arrogant or dismissive. It means you don't have to erase yourself just to be included. It means you get to live your life aligned with your truth, even if that truth makes some people uncomfortable. And if it does, let it, because comfort is not the goal. Growth is. You are not here to be a version of yourself that fits neatly into other people's preferences. You are here to be the version that feels true, whole, and unapologetic. And if that means some people walk away, let them. If that means you stand alone for a while, stand tall. Because the people who are meant for you will never ask you to shrink. They'll celebrate your fullness. They'll meet you where you are, and they'll grow beside you, not beneath you. So let this be your reminder. You don't owe anyone a smaller, quieter, dimmer version of yourself. You're not made to hide. You are made to be seen, heard, and felt in your fullness. Stand tall in who you are, even if it makes others uncomfortable. The right people will rise to meet you, and those who don't were never meant to walk beside the real you anyway. Keep showing up. Keep shining, and never apologize for refusing to shrink.